It started with her smile, my mom's best friend, and the words I never should have believed. One secret won't I still remember the first time I really noticed her. My mom had friends over all the time, and usually I kept to myself, slipping in and out with quick greetings before disappearing to my room. But that evening felt different. I was in the kitchen, rinsing a glass, when I heard her laugh, warm, rich, and a little too alive for the quiet rhythm of our house. I turned, and there she was, my mom's friend. I'd seen her before, of course, but somehow this time was sharper, more vivid, like a moment framed by a camera. She was in her early 40s, with the kind of elegance that doesn't try too hard, hair pinned back loosely, a soft blouse in muted tones, the faintest trace of perfume that carried even across the room. She looked at me, and for a second, I thought she was studying me too. Then she smiled, tilting her head as if trying to match the young man in front of her with the boy she remembered. "Well," she said, amused, "you're not the kid running around the yard anymore, are you?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I managed to smile, though it probably looked more awkward than I intended. "Guess not," I said, my voice quieter than I'd hoped. She chuckled again, and I swear it lingered in the air. Something about her presence felt alive in a way I couldn't ignore. She wasn't flashy or overly dressed up, but there was a confidence in the way she leaned against the counter, crossing her arms lightly, watching me with eyes that carried both kindness and something else. Maybe curiosity, maybe mischief. Mom called her back into the living room, but before she left, she tapped the edge of the counter and said, almost playfully, "Don't hide in here too long. You might actually enjoy our company." I watched her walk away, and only when she was gone did I realize I'd been holding my breath. Later that night, I caught myself thinking about the smallest details. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear mid-conversation, how the corners of her mouth lifted just before she laughed. I couldn't explain why those little gestures mattered, only that they had lodged themselves into my memory. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It was awareness, a subtle shift, like stepping into a room you've walked through 100 times, but suddenly noticing the light hits differently. She was my mom's friend. She wasn't supposed to stand out, and yet she did. As I lay in bed, the sound of her laughter replayed in my head, echoing faintly like a melody I couldn't shake. Something told me that I wouldn't be able to look at her the same way again. And I was right. But secrets, they always do. The second time I saw her, it wasn't in a crowded living room. It was quieter, almost intimate by accident. My mom had asked me to help carry in a few grocery bags from the car, and when I stepped outside, there she was, balancing 2 heavy paper bags against her hip. "Here, let me," I said, reaching out before I could think twice. She gave me that same amused smile, her brow lifting. "Always on time to rescue someone, huh?" Her voice had a way of making ordinary words feel personal, as if she was speaking only to me. I took the bags, and for a moment, our fingers brushed against each other's. It was nothing, bare skin meeting for a fraction of a second, but it stayed with me. The warmth of her hand seemed to echo long after she let go. We carried the bags inside together, and I tried to focus on the task, but awareness tugged at me with every step. When she walked ahead, the faint scent of her perfume lingered, not strong, just enough to remind me she was there. Inside, she set the groceries down and glanced around. My mom had already gone upstairs, leaving just the 2 of us in the kitchen. The silence felt different this time, thicker somehow. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed lightly, watching as I sorted items into the fridge. "You've grown taller since I last saw you," she remarked almost casually. "Yeah, I guess," I said, fumbling with a carton of milk. "Or maybe you just remember me shorter." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Maybe, but it suits you." Her words landed deeper than they should have. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. Gentle, noticing, as if she was studying me not as someone's son, but as myself. For a brief moment, her eyes lingered on mine, longer than polite conversation would allow. I felt my chest tighten, the air between us suddenly heavy. She looked away first, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, pretending to check the bags. I should have stepped back, given myself space. Instead, I found myself leaning on the opposite counter, closer than necessary. Neither of us spoke for a while. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, and I wondered if she could hear how fast my heart was beating. Eventually, she cleared her throat, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You know, you don't have to be so serious. I'm not going to bite. It was a joke, but it carried something else, something unspoken. My laugh came out awkward, but I couldn't stop the warmth spreading through me. When she finally left, the kitchen felt emptier than before. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the counter where she'd leaned, the faint trace of her perfume still clinging to the air. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was awareness, and it was growing. It happened on a quiet afternoon, the kind of day where nothing feels urgent. My mom had asked me to help set up the backyard for a small get-together. She went inside to take a call, leaving me and her friend outside by ourselves. I was arranging chairs when she walked over, holding 2 glasses of iced tea. She offered one to me with a smile that felt warmer than the sun overhead. "You look like you could use this," she said. "Thanks," I replied, taking the glass. Our fingers brushed again. Accidental, harmless. But this time, she didn't pull back immediately. It was only a second, maybe less, but my chest tightened all the same. We sat on the patio, the quiet stretching between us. She tilted her head, watching me in a way that felt disarming. "You've changed a lot," she said softly. "Not just taller. There's something different in the way you carry yourself." I laughed nervously. "I guess growing up does that." She nodded, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if she were measuring the weight of my words. "Maybe. Or maybe you've grown into who you really are." Her tone caught me off guard. It wasn't idle small talk. It felt personal, intentional. My throat went dry. I wanted to answer, to say something meaningful back. But before I could, she leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Don't tell your mom." "But—" She paused, her lips curving into a smile that was both playful and secretive. "I sometimes think I enjoy talking to you more than I do with her." The words made my stomach flip. I tried to hide the smile tugging at my lips. "That sounds like a dangerous confession." Her eyes glimmered, the faintest spark of mischief there. "One secret won't hurt," she whispered, almost teasing. The world seemed to still in that moment. The garden sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of a lawnmower, faded into the background. It was just her voice, low and close, carrying more weight than she probably intended. I laughed lightly, trying to break the tension, but my pulse betrayed me, racing faster with every second. "You make it sound like we're partners in crime." "Maybe we are," she said, holding my gaze. There was a challenge in her eyes, but also something else, something softer. Vulnerability, maybe. Neither of us spoke after that. She leaned back in her chair, sipping her drink as though nothing had happened, but my mind was spinning. That single line, "One secret won't hurt," echoed in my head like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. I knew she could have meant it lightly, just a playful remark between friends. But I also knew she didn't have to say it at all. And the way she looked at me afterward told me it wasn't just a joke. I sat there in silence, pretending to sip my iced tea, while inside me a boundary shifted. The line between what was harmless and what was dangerous had been crossed, softly, almost imperceptibly, but crossed all the same. And I couldn't shake the feeling that neither of us would forget it. After that afternoon on the patio, something unspoken began to thread itself between us. We didn't acknowledge it directly. Neither of us dared, but every time I saw her afterward, I could feel the shift. It started with little things. A text here and there, always with a reason that sounded practical enough. "Can you remind your mom about our dinner on Saturday?" Or, "Do you know if she still wants me to bring dessert?" On the surface, harmless. But the messages always carried something beneath them. The way she added a smiley face. The way she signed her name when she didn't need to. The way I found myself rereading them long after I'd replied. When she called, her voice carried that same warmth. Soft, steady, drawing me in even when the words were ordinary. I'd catch myself smiling, my chest tight with a mix of guilt and anticipation, because I knew these exchanges weren't meant to feel this significant. But they did. The silences grew heavier, too. One evening, she came over earlier than expected, before my mom got home. I was on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when she knocked lightly and stepped in. "Mind if I wait here?" she asked, her tone casual. "Of course," I said, standing up too quickly, as if I needed to prove something. We sat in the living room, the television playing in the background, neither of us paying attention. She leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, her foot brushing against my knee where I sat beside her. She didn't move it. I didn't either. The air grew thick with awareness. I could hear the faint rhythm of her breathing, steady, almost calm, while mine felt uneven. She laughed at something on the screen. Not because it was funny, I think, but because the silence between us had become too loud. "You're so quiet," she teased, turning her head toward me. I swallowed, forcing a smile. "Maybe I just don't know what to say." Her eyes lingered on mine for a moment longer than necessary. "That's all right," she said softly. "Sometimes silence says enough." My heart was racing, but outwardly I stayed still, afraid to break whatever fragile balance we were keeping. Her hand rested on the cushion between us, and I felt the urge to reach for it, to close that last bit of distance. But I didn't. Neither of us did. Later, when my mom finally walked in, everything snapped back into place. We shifted in our seats, pretending nothing had happened, as though the silence hadn't nearly swallowed us whole. But after she left that night, I lay awake in my room replaying it all. The brush of her foot, the weight of her gaze, the quiet that had felt heavier than any conversation. She was right. Silence said enough. Too much, maybe. And the secret we weren't speaking aloud was becoming impossible to ignore. Secrets are heavy. At first, they feel light, like something you can pocket and carry around with ease. But the longer you hold them, the heavier they become, pressing down until you can't pretend it's nothing anymore. That's what it was like with her. The closeness between us had grown in ways that weren't visible to anyone else, but I felt it in every glance, every pause, every excuse to linger just a little longer in the same room. It wasn't physical, not in any way someone could point to. It was subtler than that. Quiet laughter that lasted too long, silences we didn't rush to fill, the way her hand would brush my arm and neither of us moved away. But secrets don't stay invisible forever. One evening, my mom invited her over for dinner. The three of us sat around the table, the conversation light and ordinary. But under the surface, I could feel her presence like static electricity, my awareness of her sharper than anything else in the room. When she passed me a dish, her fingers lingered on mine a fraction too long. My mom didn't notice, or maybe she did and thought nothing of it, but my pulse jumped. Later, after dinner, we drifted into the living room. My mom excused herself to take a call in the other room, leaving us on the couch together. It should have been harmless, the two of us sitting side by side. But the space felt charged. Our knees brushed and I didn't move. Neither did she. She leaned closer to show me something on her phone. An article, a recipe. I can't even remember. But I remember the way her shoulder pressed against mine. The warmth of her so close I could feel it through my shirt. For a second, the rest of the world disappeared. Then the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway. My mom was coming back. We sprang apart too quickly, the movement almost guilty. She shifted in her seat, crossing her legs, pretending to scroll through her phone. I grabbed the remote and flicked the TV on, anything to make the moment look casual. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give us away. When my mom re-entered, she looked at us briefly, her eyes flicking from one to the other before settling on the television. She said nothing, but the silence that followed was heavier than before. I glanced at her, my mom's friend, and for the first time I saw something different in her expression. Not just the playful confidence she usually carried, but a flicker of something else. Fear, vulnerability, maybe even regret. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized how fragile our secret really was. All it took was one glance, one misstep, and everything could unravel. And the truth was, it already felt like it was slipping out of our hands. She had said one secret wouldn't hurt, but I was starting to see the cracks forming. And secrets with cracks don't stay hidden for long. The night it all broke open wasn't planned. Secrets rarely unravel in neat, expected ways. They tear at the seams when you least expect it. It was late, well past midnight. Couldn't sleep. My phone buzzed softly on the nightstand, and when I reached for it, her name was there. Just seeing it made my chest tighten. "Are you awake?" I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back, "Yeah." Seconds later, another message appeared. "Can I stop by? Just for a minute." I didn't even have time to question it. My heart was already racing when I heard the knock at the door. I slipped downstairs, careful not to wake my mom, and opened it. She stood there in the dim porch light, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. No practiced smile, no playful remark. Just her, looking tired and unsure. "Sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have come this late." But she stepped inside anyway. We sat in the living room, the house dark except for the faint glow from a lamp in the corner. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, pressing down until I finally broke it. "You said one secret wouldn't hurt," I said quietly. "But it's hurting, isn't it?" Her eyes flickered, and for once, she didn't look away. She set her hands in her lap, fingers twisting together. I thought I could keep it light, just a little closeness, just something small that wouldn't matter. Her voice cracked slightly. "But it does matter." Hearing her admit it made something inside me ache. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "So what is this then? Because I can't pretend it doesn't exist anymore." Her breath caught. She pressed a hand to her forehead, as if trying to find the right words. "Do you know what it's like to feel invisible?" she whispered. "To smile through rooms, to be the dependable friend, the responsible one, but deep down." She stopped, her voice trembling. "Deep down you're lonely in a way you can't admit to anyone?" I felt the weight of her words settle in my chest. For the first time, I understood that all her teasing, all her confidence, wasn't the whole story. There was something fragile underneath. I wanted to reach for her hand, to anchor her, but I held back, afraid of what it might mean. "You're not invisible," I said, my voice low but firm. "Not to me." Her eyes glistened, and for a moment, neither of us breathed. Then she gave a small, broken laugh. "That's exactly the problem." The truth hung there between us, raw and unpolished. No excuses left, no pretense. Just the quiet admission that we had crossed a line neither of us could erase. For the first time, I saw her not as my mom's friend, not as someone untouchable, but as a woman carrying years of silence. And in that moment, I realized how dangerous closeness can become, not because of what you do, but because of what it awakens. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavier than noise. We sat there, side by side on the couch, the air between us thick with everything that had just been said. My hands were clenched together, restless, while she sat still, her gaze fixed on the darkened window. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was low, almost fragile. "This was never supposed to matter this much." The words pierced through me. I turned toward her, searching her face, hoping to find something. Permission, reassurance, maybe even a sliver of hope. But what I saw instead was exhaustion. The weight of secrecy, of guilt, of longing that had finally taken its toll. I swallowed hard. "It does matter," I said quietly. "At least it does to me." Her eyes flicked toward mine, and in that fleeting moment, I saw it all. Desire, regret, tenderness, and fear, all tangled together. She reached out, almost hesitantly, and placed her hand against my cheek. Her palm was warm, steady, yet trembling just slightly. The world seemed to stop. My chest ached as I leaned into her touch, knowing it was both a gift and a goodbye. "You don't know how badly I wish this could be different," she whispered. "But your mother trusts me. She trusts us. And if she ever knew—" Her voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. The cost was too high. I closed my eyes for a moment, holding on to the feeling of her hand before she pulled it away. So what do we do? I asked, my voice breaking more than I wanted it to. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders sagging. We let this be what it was. A moment, connection, something real, but not something we can keep. It was the hardest thing I'd ever had to hear, because part of me wanted to fight, to insist there was a way. But deep down, I knew she was right. Our bond had already stretched the boundaries of what was safe, what was fair. To go further would mean breaking something we could never repair. We sat there for another long silence, the kind where words would only get in the way. Then, almost reluctantly, she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around me. The hug was tight, unguarded, filled with everything neither of us could say aloud. I held her back, memorizing the feel of her in my arms, knowing it might be the last time. When we finally pulled apart, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. She gave a small, bittersweet smile. "You'll understand one day," she said softly. "Why this has to end here." She stood, smoothed her blouse, and without another word, walked to the door. I stayed on the couch, listening to the soft click as it shut behind her. The house was silent again, but I wasn't the same, because sometimes one secret does hurt, not just for what it hides, but for the way it changes you forever. And she had changed me. If this story stayed with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more slow burn romances. Your support helps keep these stories alive.